Okay, I'm going to continue my discussion of this book right here. And do you remember I was telling you in a previous video I wanted you to figure out what an agrarian society was? Well, an agrarian society is a society that is really dependent on agriculture. Now, they, of course, had other trades in the area. Obviously, Jesus was a Jewish carpenter and handyman, okay? But the primary focus of that society was agriculture. Everything was done to help the harvest. Okay, and you'll see this as a theme of the Bible, especially if you see the feasts of Tabernacles, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Pentecost. So all those 7 feasts that you hear about so often was based on the feasts of an agrarian society. And so the Jerusalem society was an agrarian society. That's what it was. And so therefore that's where you get this. Now, okay, so what else was causing such a big problem between Jesus and the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Well, one of the biggest problems was that the Pharisees and Sadducees were brokers of God's power. Okay? And what that meant was that in order to go see God, you had to talk to these Pharisees and Sadducees, and they would go on your behalf to talk to God. Well, Jesus came along and said, look, I'm your broker now. I am God, and I'm your broker, and you can talk to me anytime you want. You don't have to go to the temple anymore. Oops! That was a big deal for the Pharisees and Sadducees, because they had all this power, and all of a sudden that power is being stripped from them. That ticked them off. That's why they wanted Jesus stoned. Simple as that. Okay? And what was happening was, one of the biggest things you'll find out was the Sabbath day. And that was, Jesus kept challenging the Sabbath day. And the Pharisees and Sadducees were trying to libel Jesus using the Sabbath day as a means of doing so. And all of a sudden Jesus was like, hey, yeah, right, you're not going to do this. And he countered them on a regular basis. And that's what ticked them off. They tried insulting Jesus. They tried to libel Jesus, the whole 9 yards. It didn't work, and yeah. You saw the result. Okay. Now, these gospel messages. You have the message of the 10 lepers. Jesus heals them all. 9 of them take off. All 10 of them take off, but one of them comes back and starts worshiping Jesus. The thing is, there's more than one story going on in that thing. You have first the story of Jesus healing the 10 lepers. Then you have the second story where one of the lepers actually comes back and worships Jesus. That's a second story. Then you have a third story that goes along with it, because the one who came back was a Samaritan. Now you say, well, what's the big deal about Samaritans? Okay, Samaritans were a sect of Israelites that was separate from the Judeans. Okay, remember, there were 2 kingdoms, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. And they didn't get along very well. And so for a Samaritan to come back and worship Jesus when people in Judea weren't worshiping him, that was a big deal. So you see, there was actually 3 stories going on in that one simple story. And this is what I was talking about when I was talking about the literacy tells. When you first read the story of the 10 lepers, you get the basic story. Well, there was 10 lepers, Jesus healed them. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you find these second and third stories going on here. Well, one of them came back, and that one happened to be a Samaritan. So you see, it really gets kind of complicated. So the question really comes down to is, was Luke writing about the healing, or was he writing about other things that were important to the early church? And you have to kind of make that judgment up for yourself. All right? And so You'll read more about this in this wonderful book, Prophet and Teacher. You'll read about this. And when you begin to realize what all was going on when the Gospels were written, you'll get a better idea of what was actually written in the Gospels. Anyway, that's all I've got for tonight. I will tell you more in a future video. Stay tuned.